Hello and welcome to a JoyToy unboxing video. So we're looking here at the Ultramarines Terminator Chaplin, and this guy is pretty impressive. He's actually over 12 centimeters tall when he stands fully upright, and he's got all the skulls. Now if we look on the back here, we get a few options here. So we've got 3 hand options effectively per hand, and his 2 weapons. So let's get the box open. So inside, as you can see, nice chunky figure, nice paint job, really nice Crozius, pretty good paint effects, the storm bolter, and then the extra hand options. And loose in the box, I also got this stand, which for some reason didn't seem to come on the Ork, so I don't know what that's all about. I would expect this to be standard in all the boxes, but maybe it isn't. That's something I might need to look at. So anyway, we need to have a look at this guy who is fabulous with his really amazing Terminator suit, although I'm not sure how practical it actually is, but there you go. So the storm bolter, really impressive, and this, an absolute amazing power mace, obviously the Crozius, I believe it's called. This head, a little bit tricksy to get to, but looks amazing. It can be moved around. Now this figure came out the box fairly loose. I think it wasn't quite put together properly, which, bearing in mind how much this figure costs, is a little bit irritating. His legs all a bit twisted and everything, but that's because he's actually got pretty good flexibility apart from his arms, which for some reason they've designed in a weird way. Now these great big long tassels, totally over the top, and you could in theory replace them because they're clip-on, but part of the shtick of 40k is totally over the top ridiculousness. So it's got a really nice cloak, really nice paint job, and he's a pretty sturdy unit, stands on his feet a bit like the Ork well. I'm not sure whether he's quite as poseable as the Ork in theory. I think on paper he should be more poseable, but these pauldrons, they just don't want to move, and rather than be attached to the arms, I think they're actually attached to the Terminator suit itself. So when you move it up, it just clonks into it. You can't sort of move it out the way. So part of the redesign of this would be, I think, to articulate the pauldrons on the arms so he actually gets good posability. Now I suppose in law they are meant to be all protection, minimal maneuverability, but it's a bit of a shame. Now this wobbling is a bit ridiculous because, as you can see, I can actually break his back and turn him 360, which I'm not 100% sure is meant to happen. And I can't remember his legs might actually pull off. The knee joints are a little bit ugly, but slightly better implemented than the Ork, and they do move around quite a lot. But you've got to watch out you don't pin your sort of plastic dangly bits, which no one wants. And his feet are very loose, and this foot actually is super loose because, as you see, it just falls off. So yeah, some QA issues, but nothing major. I don't have any snap bits, I don't think. Don't think I've got any missing bits either. But yeah, this is a great figure. This is another one that I really quite like to look at, and I was a bit torn between this and one of the other Chaplin figures. The cloak is a softer plastic, but it is quite stiff. Now I believe there is a lovely cloth replacement, but you've got this fantastic paint application, and you'd have to be a pretty good painter to emulate. So from a paint point of view, this is a pretty good application here. So very pleased. I do fiddle with some of these bits, but I don't want to pull them off, but I am aware they do come off, and then you could maybe fit a chain or a purity seal instead, so you don't have quite so many skulls, because I think it's over 30 in total on this figure, which of course more skulls for the skull gods. Now the arms are really frustrating because they've got great potential, but the pauldrons, as I've mentioned already, just so limiting, but they do look good. They just sadly aren't articulated properly. So it does make this a bit like the Ork be both brilliant and totally flawed, and it's really frustrating. So here we have all 3 figures together. So the Ork, the Terminator, and of course our tiny little Imperial Guard, and the height difference between them is fairly significant. So there's half a centimetre height difference between the Guard and the Ork. And then if we look at This fella here, it looks to me to be about the same, but in theory this figure's meant to be taller. I do wonder if this is one of the old Terminator designs. The new ones I think are a bit taller. As you can see, the Ork and the Terminator can look each other eye to eye, which seems roughly appropriate. Now, you don't need to worry too much. This maybe is one of the firstborn Space Marines, so he's a bit smaller than the new ones that have come about because of the Smurfs getting their DNA into everything. But there you go. Now, the Imperial Guard, he has been the most impressive figure. Really good paint job, really good posability. As you can see, scale-wise, it sort of feels in some ways more realistic. I think the idea that Space Marines are 10 foot tall is stretching things a bit, unless they're using lots of Ogrin DNA. But you know, having Space Marines stand at a good 7 to 8 foot tall, that seems a bit more sort of appropriate. I know it's a bit silly talking about ridiculous sci-fi stuff and appropriate and all that and 40k, but yeah, out of all these figures, the cheapest is definitely, in my opinion, the best. The most options, the most posability, but these two figures do look awesome, and I am glad I've got them. It does make me keen to pick up some more Guard, and I am tempted by grabbing the Orks, but the money is the problem. They're not cheap, as I've mentioned a few times. But just look at them, aren't they great? They're posable, come really well painted, assembled, and you can have great fun with this Terminator. I think, you know, he would be quite fun to animate. Just can't twist his arm properly. And what's concerning, it's not just up and down for the T-pose, but backwards and forwards is limited by the pauldrons, which again, in some ways makes sense, but I just think in the far future, would you design a combat suit that means you barely move your arms, which means in melee and in combat you'd really struggle. So yeah, as you can see, I keep popping up the Guard just so you can see the difference in the quality of the paint. But yeah, this little fella, definitely, he is my recommendation for you. If you're only going to buy a few figures, buy the Guard, because you know they are the best. And of course, it does make me keen to look at JoyToy's other human sci-fi figures, because you know, I love 40k, but I also love money and keeping it in my bank account. But yeah, it's a real difficult one to, you know, do I buy more Ultramarines? Do I buy more Orks? Do I buy Guard, or do I just keep myself with these three figures? Now this guy I'm going to get set up and posed and take some stills. They'll come up at the end of the video. And as you can see here, his hands, unlike the Ork, are a little bit easier to get things into, but yeah, they're still a little bit stiff, and I'm a bit afraid of breaking them, but they are fairly robust. So for the photos, I'll get that sorted out, but as I'm fiddling with this behind the camera, I don't want to be fiddling too much and end up breaking things off or snapping things or causing unnecessary damage or paint marks. So yeah, this is a great figure. Is he the best Terminator figure? In some ways, yes, because he just looks awesome. I mean, just look at this guy here. It's like, who? Me? You? Looks really good from the back there. I mean, what a great pose. And you can get in some really cool pose, and that face, it'd be great to have that for other Terminator figures. I guess potentially if it's compatible you could pop it out. But some of the poses you can actually get him striding. I could see some stop motion animation with this guy being possible, but with limitations on the arms. So there you go. I hope you've enjoyed the look at the first 3 JoyToy figures I've ever owned. So until the next one, the Emperor protects. Happy gaming.